Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to a not so live stream chat. Of course, I am your humble wolfofbricks proprietor, Jim. I am here and very lucky enough to have Dave from Scots Toys on, and he also has a very good YouTube channel, Scots Toys. I will gladly put the link below, so please make sure you subscribe to him. Dave, how you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. It's getting kind of late at night here. Had a fun full day, but always excited to talk about some Lego.
Right. And we already, talked for about 10 minutes about other non-Lego things and the chaos that happens around the holidays and putting kids to bed and stuff like that. So, for those of you that, for those people out there that may not have subscribed to your YouTube channel yet, why don't you just give an overview of what that channel is and what you do regarding Lego? We could definitely see some little containers right behind you.
Yeah.
And if you could just talk about that for a little bit.
Sure. So my YouTube channel has changed over the last, 4 or 5 years that it's kind of been in creation. It started off as kind of a passion of me and my son. When he was 3, I kind of got him some Lego sets, and man, he was tearing into them and really just enjoyed building with him. And so I wanted to share that with the world. And so we kind of jumped into it. We did a lot of stuff together early on, and I'm an all chips on the table kind of guy. And so as soon as we started going down that rabbit hole, I went all in. And so then I just kind of took it over in essence. He fell out of a little bit of the Lego stuff, and I wanted to keep running with it and enjoyed all the friends and people that I've met online. So pretty much what my channel is now. So if you were to go there now, you would see some stuff very similar to what you do, Jim, along the Lego investing side. That's kind of one avenue of my channel right now. The second avenue is this insanity behind me that we refer to as Bricklink. It's a major time suck, but it's fun if you enjoy the parts. And then lastly, it's kind of something that started off as a reselling kind of eBay garage sale type series that I migrated more into the general investment. So trying to diversify a little bit of my income away from Lego into some other fun collectible avenues.
Cool. And, while you were talking, I was thinking, when you were talking about community, right? Like I could almost see 3 to 5 years from now, back in the 90s, and I guess it's still going on now. It's been forever since I've been in that circle, but I used to be in like a chess circle, and there would be like tons of people that would meet in the library. And it was very serious, right? I could see when we're talking community, grown adults, not elderly, but maybe elderly of all ages, I should say, meeting in libraries, and whether they're talking about mocks or, they're bringing in each one of their modulars. Yeah. I mean, there's opportunity for things to explode, far beyond what even Lego thought as adults only or 18 plus or whatever. So
maybe you're not aware. Have you heard of the lugs?
I have not. Explain is that something you
Yeah, so I'm not actually a part of them, although I've kind of met a lot of people from them. And a lug, for those of you who don't know, is a Lego user group. And so there are Lego sanctioned lugs. So Lego actually supports and provides additional services and products, in essence, to a lot of local lugs. There's lugs all over the place, all over the US at least. I think there are some in other parts of the world. I'm just not as familiar with it. But we have some in our area, Southeast Michigan lug, SEMA lug, I think is what they call it. And it's just a place exactly like what you described. They go to a library or a local community hall kind of a deal. They all get together. They'll do things like parting out sets together and do part drafts. They will come together to place, I forget if it's quarterly or yearly, but they're allowed to place very large bricks and piece orders directly from Lego and get access to some more exclusive parts at some really good pricing. So that's another perk of it. And then they just get to sit around and build Lego together and, display their mocks and everything. So exactly what you just described is a thing that you can go and actually be a part of.
So that's cool because I'm familiar with LAN to a point. I mean, I'm from
Yeah, that's a little more of an exclusive party.
right, right. And I mean, I became familiar with LAN when M&R Productions, I guess, got the boot
Yeah,
from
yeah.
there. And but I think Emmasaurus and a few other people
Yep.
are on there. So that's cool. Well, I'll wait till one of those chapters open up in Louisville. That's definitely something I'm not going to lead because
Yeah.
they'll see my application on my name and they'll say no, thank you. We'll actually blacklist the state of Kentucky because Jim
That's it. We got to keep Jim out of here.
is there. So
yeah.
Cool. So you know the real interesting thing about you is in not necessarily that you have a passion for Lego, because everybody has a passion, but when you and I caught up the first time, like we had like this get to know you icebreaker conversation, you're from Michigan and you drove all the way to Philadelphia, right?
Yeah, I think I told you I'm kind of a chips all in kind of guy, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's great. I mean, that's some serious passion. I mean, you know, I flip a coin on whether or not I'm going to go down to my local convention, and you're driving like multiple states. So.
Yeah, so this year was a lot easier in terms of there was only the one convention that I did, and that was Philly Brickfest Live 2021, I suppose. And it was a great time. It was a lot smaller event. The last time I went was in 2019. It was actually the first year that I went to, I'm going to say, any conventions. In 28, I dabbled a little bit at Brick World, Michigan, but it's a much smaller, what we refer to as a non-hub event, and we can go into that in a little bit. But the drive to Pennsylvania, much smaller event. It was only one this year, but in 2019, I ended up doing 3 of the large hub events. And so I drove from Michigan to Philly, Pennsylvania. I also drove from Michigan to Chicago, Illinois, or Rockford kind of area. And then I also drove to, where was the other one at? Brick Fair, Virginia. I forget. I think it's Chantilly, Virginia was the other one.
Oh, wow.
So I think that was the longest of my trips yet.
Cool. Out of all of those, I think Chicago is the closest one to me. So, and my son
Chicago's a really big event.
Yeah, I mean, I've been to Chicago many times. It's very cool. I don't like big cities like New York, but Chicago for me is like the right fit. So my son's 5, maybe in like 2 years, whenever he's
perfect
7, and we're all over the COVID stuff. But so that's cool. So whenever you go to these events, like how, I assume that there are some events where Lego is at least a part of, like they might display some new sets or they might have some reps. I don't know. Is I would think maybe Chicago, and maybe not necessarily, you know, Chattanooga, Tennessee or something. Like
so it's really more the foundation, right? So you've got a couple different companies. You've got Brickfest Live, which is the one that they do a whole series of events, but their home event in essence is Philly, Pennsylvania. And so that's kind of one company, one organization. They put on probably, I don't know, I'm going to get it wrong, but I'm going to say half a dozen to a dozen different Lego actual conventions, smaller scale than the hub one. You've also got Brick World, which is another organization, and their main hub is Chicago. Again, they do all the other ones. They're actually the convention or organization that does Brick World Michigan, which is my local one. And then the other one is Brick Fair, is another very large organization, and their hub event is the Virginia one, the Chantilly.
Okay, cool.
Lego does actually have relationships, or these companies do have relationships with Lego. In the past, the relationship has been a lot about Lego setting up a little booth there to be a vendor, sell some stuff. It's less about Lego using it as kind of what they do at the toy fair, where they're displaying new sets.
Okay.
It's more about them just coming in and trying to represent the community. They provide a lot of donations that the organization does as giveaways throughout the entire event. So they're constantly giving away Lego of some kind during the show. And Lego's kind of there to help sponsor and promote that event, because the people that go there are obviously huge fans of Lego, right? They're the people that are building mocks and buying hundreds of sets, you know, you and I, in some ways there. And they want to build that community because they know that by having these people that do these things on a mass scale, much like what they're doing with Lego Masters right now, actually, It's getting it in front of young kids and a new audience who come to the shows to see all these crazy things. And that's what's kind of spurring the next generation for them. And that's why they kind of reach out and kind of invest, I suppose, in those opportunities.
Well, that's interesting because I know, and I'm going to try not go off topic, but like a few weeks ago, I was watching Nickelodeon. Well, I wasn't watching Nickelodeon. Was on TV.
Sure.
And I was totally watching it. And they had something I've never seen before. And there was like, so whenever you watch like the NFL on Sundays, you'll see, you know, a lot of older gentlemen that are like in their 60s and 70s. And I saw like this 20-something-year-old, you know, hip looking kid, and he's talking to like an 8-year-old kid, and it was almost like a game day thing. And whenever the football players would run into an end zone for a touchdown, like Nickelodeon animated like these slime cannons sliming these people. And I said to myself, that's actually a brilliant thing to do because, you know, the NFL is having some issues with CTE and things of that sort. So, you know, making a short story quite long, you know, that's pretty ingenious for Lego. I mean, it's almost the same business model. Get them hooked early, and then you know, everybody's 18 plus now when it comes to Lego, so you have it for life, which isn't a bad thing. I mean, if you're having fun, I mean, it's an awesome thing.
Well, it's really interesting too, right? Because as much as, I mean, in all fairness, right, Lego started off as a child's toy. It is what it is. Us adults, I think, are clinging on to these kind of things because we love being children. Right. It's a part of what we grew up with. It's a time period of our lives that we remember with this nostalgia, this special little flack that we want to be able to recapture a piece of that. And that's what it does for us. And I think that's why, you know, once you get to the point where you're financially stable, or at least have some, you know, extra income that you can use, well, what do you use it on? Use it on things to make you happy. And if that's something that you recall from your childhood is making you happy, that's where you're going to invest that money, in essence. And I think Lego has realized that. It maybe has taken them a long time to finally get there and really start catering towards that. But they've kind of got both audiences now. And so as much as, they want to cater to the people that do have the money and make all those expenditures, and they want to get them not only buying the stuff for the kids, but they also want to get them buying stuff for themselves. Because, I mean, in all fairness, like, I had some Lego growing up, but my addiction came very much from me interfacing with it with my son, not from me wanting to reclaim that. I had video games and other stuff that I spent all my money on to reclaim my childhood. But this was a newborn thing out of my relationship with my son and the time that we were able to spend together and the fun that came from that. And so I think that they really, you know, diving deep and continuing to invest in that next generation. It's something that I think a lot of companies are really starting to see. It's big in the, I'm going to go real left field here, sports card market. The sports card market right now has been something that for a long period of time kind of really fell to the back burner and wasn't a massive, huge thing. And all of a sudden it started kind of, you know, picking things up again. And they're really starting to invest very heavily in the younger generation because investors like you and I here is that, look, if we want this stuff to be selling in 10, 15 years, it's not to you and me, it's to the younger generation. Those are the people that are going to buy them because they missed out of them. They saw them, but they couldn't afford them or whatever that is. And that's where our market is, in essence. And a lot of companies, I think, are realizing that as well.
Right. I was thinking, you know, I was on vacation last week, and so I had limited time to see what's going on with Lego, but I saw, and I don't even know the full details, but I saw something about like vintage space is coming back, or there's like some minifigures or something like that. And let me tell you, because that's all I was into whenever I was a kid. And it wasn't even necessarily because I liked space. I mean, space was cool, but all my buddies were making spaceships and stuff like that. So I was too. And so when I saw that, like, I was like, oh, here we go. And then of course I'm going to, you know, show it to my son, and I'm going to tell him that he better like it just like I did. But
well, I mean, we had that though, right? I mean, it was very much, and I think a lot of what Lego does or how they market really does cater towards world events, right? Is back then you kind of had all the, you know, I mean, it wasn't that far removed in essence from the whole lunar landing and everything, right? The walk on the moon. Well, it was a big topic in the world, and therefore they put all these sets out. We're able to capitalize a lot on that. And what do we have today? We've got all these companies that are launching, you know, Will Shatner up into space all of a sudden, right? Blue Origin, sending him up. Jeff Bezos, I think, was the one before him, in essence, the owner of Blue Origin. He went up into space as well. And so all of a sudden space is this huge hot topic in the world to where, yeah, I mean, I'd be producing space sets left and right too.
Yeah, it's going to blow up in the next couple of years because of Armistice too, which I've just recently found out about. I'm like, what? We are going back to the moon? Okay.
Yep.
So that's cool. So, you know, let's talk a little bit about Bricklink.
Sure.
What made you become a brick linker? I mean, I am not a brick linker, but I see that potentially in my future, right? And I feel like it's like an acquired thing. Like once you're there, and you correct me if I'm wrong, once you're a brick linker, you're a brick linker, right? But I'm just not there yet. I mean, when you look behind you, it's like crap. You know, there's a
lot of
you have to be organized too. And if I pan this camera around, you wouldn't see everything but organization.
Well, in all fairness, I will say this is a very chosen shot right now. The other end of the basement, and for anyone who happens to be here that has seen some of my videos in the backgrounds, you will know that a lot of the sourcing ends up turning into a large mess. And I'm assuming that's the same stuff that you've got down there. I mean, I've got piles of used sets. Shoot, just here out of camera range, I could reach down and grab half a dozen sets or more, waiting to get in a box to go to Amazon FBA. So
like packing tape right here and just scattered on the floor.
Yeah. So, but in all fairness, the Bricklink stuff, yeah, I feel like there is that if you like it, you get into it, and if you enjoy it, you're going to stick with it because there's something to it, right? And honestly, I think the important part is, and it's not these drawers. These drawers aren't magical. It's the concept of what the drawers represent, which is a system. And so as soon as you put a system in place, it makes it manageable, and it makes it easy to satisfy orders when they come in. And I think that's the key to the longevity of it. It is more time consuming. Like I could technically, if I just grabbed a random set here, right, and said, look, I want to make this set available to the general public, I could go on and list set number 40499 here, the Santa battle pack or whatever we call that, the reindeer battle pack. I could list that and keep every last piece inside of this box. Right. And then when someone placed an order, I could dig through this one box to pull out those pieces. But that would be painfully labor intensive when it came to satisfying that order, right?
Right.
And the problem with that is that then you're doing it on somebody else's schedule, right? And you've talked a lot about this in the past with the whole Q4 and prepping boxes, and you know, do it in Q2, Q3 when you're sitting around. It's the same thing with Bricklink, is that what this system allows me to do is to choose when I invest my time, right? When I get an order in, pulling the order down from the wall is very quick. It's the time to get the parts into the system. That's the time consuming part, but I get to choose when I do that, right? They don't get added to my inventory until I've got my pieces. I'm going to say in my wall. It's technically one step before the wall, but they're all sorted, and it's a pretty easy process from there.
Cool. So I'm going to make a statement, and you tell me if this is an accurate statement.
Sure.
Because I've heard this from a few bricklinkers. So let's say somebody's been a bricklinker, I don't know, maybe 2 years, 18 months to 2 years. The first getting into it is extraordinarily intensive, right? And what I mean by that, you're putting in so much time, there's very little reward. However, eventually, once you're organized, once you have all your stuff together, it's kind of the opposite. You are, you know, only spending maybe a couple hours a day, and you could potentially make, you know, $300 or $500 in sales if you know what you're doing. And so there is a reward. Is that an accurate statement? And if it is, like how long do you see that curve to where the payoff starts? Is it, you know, if you've been doing it for 2 years, is it like the first 4 months you're hammering and then you're like, oh my gosh, I think I'm just going to quit. But when month 5 comes, you're like, okay, now I get it. Now, you know, my wife doesn't have to divorce me. Like, it's, you know, it's
fingers crossed.
chat, chat me up about that if you don't mind.
Yeah. So, it's interesting. So thinking about it in a time domain is a little different. I don't know that I would put time domain in there. I would argue it's either more of a financial domain is what you rate it off of, or a part count. I guess however you want to look at that, right? So if you've got endless finances, in essence, right, you could go buy 10 of a dozen different sets, and you've got 120 sets now, and you invest a fair amount of time up front. You break all those down, you get your system in place, you get all the pieces in their individual drawers, and you'll probably have a decent part count and lot count. Those are kind of the two things. You've got the number of parts that you have in your inventory, and then you've got the lot count, which is basically the number of unique types of parts that you offer. And it's really about, to get orders in, what you need is a deep inventory and a wide inventory. It's a little bit of a combination of both, right? You've got certain people that are looking for a very key part. And so if you have 10 lots, 10 different types of pieces, well, the chances of you having that one lot that someone's looking for is probably pretty slim. Whereas if you have 5 or 10 or 15,000 different types of pieces, your chances of having that part that they're looking for increases dramatically. And then the other part is that some people want that part, but they want it in a large quantity. And so now just having a single one of those, they might bypass your store. But if you have that one part in 100 of them, they may say, look, this is the right store. And that could be what wins you the business. And so it's really like some combination, therefore, of those two things, which is why, you know, time in terms of 4 months, it's not like a website or a YouTube channel where it's about getting found so much.
Right.
Bricklink is a search-based system. And so you can be found right off the get-go. You could actually start off, if you honestly, if you took one of these reindeer battle packs and literally just parted out the one set, if you put all your pieces in there for the minimum price, you would probably get an order with a single set as your investment.
Right.
Now, would you be making hand over fist? Would it be worth your time that you put into it, the shipping, the packing, and learning that whole process? Probably not, right? If you're charging the minimum price, if you're trying to basically go in and beat everyone's price on every single piece in that set so that you can move them, you're probably not making the return on it that makes it worth that labor. And so it's that finding that fine balance of using, and Bricklink's great about putting some average pricing information in front of you to help you kind of gauge, look, and that's what a lot of people do. They try and live around the average. Different people use different strategies in terms of either discounting all their pieces a little bit from there. Some people will go in and heavily discount a couple parts in their store as a way to kind of draw people in. It's all the different forms of marketing, in essence, that every big company uses as well. So,
has there ever been like a customer of yours that purchased an enormous amount of one specific piece? Because you said that there's some people that like,
oh yeah,
like I'm curious, like what that might be. Is it like a bunch of minifigure heads or legs, or I don't know?
So I don't have large quantities of those. Where because I try and, I'll part out 5 or 10 of a single set, and then I'll move on and I'll try and do 5 or 10 of a different set to try and get the width, in essence, right? My diversity of pieces, I suppose. And so because of that, things like minifigures and heads and those kind of parts tend to be fairly unique across different sets. And so you don't build up a large pool of those. However, you'll end up with something like 2x2 blue bricks or 2x4 green bricks or whatever the case might be, right? These pieces that are more common across a lot of different Lego sets, those will be the ones that you end up amassing a larger quantity of. And you will actually have people come in, and I'm trying to think of my largest single lot. I want to say it was 300 or 400 of a single part that was ordered during a single order. And my largest total order, I want to say, was probably around 15 or 1600 parts.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, I mean, some people come in and it's that thing of like, well, what is it that gets you in the door? Because once you're in the door, you've already made the commitment to say, look, I'm going to be paying for shipping of these parts. And so now if there's other, I'm going to come here for this one thing, whatever it is that I'm looking for. And that's going to be what draws them in. And then from there, they're going to say, well, now that I'm already in your store, it's convenient to shop for some of the other things on your shelf. And so, well, yeah, I could use some of these and these will help. And, Bricklink has this whole wanted list system, which makes it easy to say, here's all these parts that I want. And when you go to a store, you can say, well, show me every part that they have that happens to fall on a list of parts that I want. And a lot of people will do purchasing from that.
Okay. So if someone, and I've talked to a few Bricklinkers and I ask not necessarily the exact question, but it's similar. Like if there was somebody that wanted to be a Bricklinker, what would be the number one theme or type of set that they should start to go into? Would it be Minecraft? Would it be Friends? Would it be, I don't know, whatever sets have the most blue bricks or something like that? I'm spitballing here.
So, yeah, you got kind of two different angles, I think. You've got the Star Wars angle is probably the best one out of all of them. And the main reason is it hits on two different directions, I suppose. So one direction, a lot of people who go to Bricklink are looking for minifigures. That's what they want, right? Whether it's a kid who just wants that one that they don't have, someone building armies or whatever the case might be. Well, the minifigures are huge selling points. I'll get orders all the time that are literally just for a single figure, right? I got a figure posted at $3, $4, and they're willing to spend another $4 or $5 in shipping to get that to them. And that's all they buy. So minifigures, especially ones that are iconic, which Star Wars is able to check those boxes, that's definitely a big one. If we're sticking with just minifigures, I would also argue that Ninjago tends to be a real big one. I see a lot of Ninjago minifigures move. Minecraft the problem with Minecraft is that you get a couple figures that you'll almost never move. Like good luck moving some Steves outside of like a huge public event, honestly. It's one of those that Steve comes in every set. Any kid who has purchased a Minecraft set probably has Steve. And so what are you going to do with your 30 that you've got now? You're almost better off, honestly, taking them and breaking them down into the torsos and legs and head pieces. But so Star Wars has the dual benefit. Then if we step aside from the Lego part and go over into the piece variety, Star Wars tends to have a lot of grays, blacks, and white pieces because it's all about spaceships and all these things that are made of metal. And so you represent that with those colored bricks. And there's a lot of people in the mock building or model building community that build large scale versions of those types of things, which means they need hundreds or thousands or, even larger than that of those types and colors of parts. And so grays, blacks, and whites tend to be really hot moving pieces. And Star Wars is able to check that box as well.
Okay. Yeah, there's a very popular piece, and I've sworn to secrecy about it. I'll tell you, I'll tell you once this is done.
Sure.
But there's this one particular piece, and it's from a Star Wars set, and if you're able to get your hands on that piece, it's bonkers. So
it's kind of crazy. So I'm going to digress here a little bit.
Please,
you'll catch me doing a little bit of rambling and taking different tangents periodically. But most everything in my store traditionally has been all new sets, which means I get 5 of a set, 10 of a set, whatever that is, break them down, sort them out, throw them on my wall. I've just now recently started looking at the concept of bulk brick, which is unbelievably intimidating when you first look at it, because it's like, here's this box full of 10 pounds of every piece under the sun is what it feels like. But the potential that's there. So I just came back from Philly Brickfest, and while I was there, and this video probably won't go live for about 2 weeks, but sneak peek maybe for a couple people on here for sure, is that I ended up purchasing, it was a $15 bag. And so Andy's Brick Shop, which is in Pennsylvania, had these big bins of just bulk brick that he brought, that he had kind of already sorted through, right? That's what they do. They buy these used bricks, they go through and take out all the minifigures and everything that they can easily see, and the rest go in this bin for people to fill up bags, kind of like a pick-a-brick wall almost. And so I filled out one Ziploc bag. It was like a quart-size bag or something, $15, and just stuffed it full, and I was searching through there. Some of those pieces that I found, when I was finally able to go and look them up, there was a motorcycle chassis I found in there. It's a $5 part just by itself.
Right.
And the whole bag was $15. And I don't know where I'm at right now, but it's astronomical in comparison to what I paid for it. I'm pretty confident that I'm on track to at least 10x that $15, if not more than that. And it was not nearly as much work as I had been concerned it would be. It's all about just figuring out what works. And, I probably spent the first 2 hours wasting time trying to figure out how in the world do I look up this part or this part. And it's really about, again, figuring out your system. And then once you have it, it kind of plays itself out and you're able to be a little bit more efficient. And getting those parts in there was a lot more exciting because a lot of them are parts that you can't go out and buy. And so the market for them continues to become more rare and more rare, much like all the retired sets that we end up getting our hands on, right? We buy a set, and every time someone buys it because they want to build it, every other one of those sets increases in value. And it's the same in the part market.
Yes, I've entertained the thought of getting into bulk bricks, but the main thing that turns me off is, I'll go on Craigslist, and I know you need to be like a sniper on Craigslist, right? And you'll see it, and it's kind of like whenever I sold cars, we would have somebody that would come in and get their car appraised, and let's say it's a BMW, and while they're waiting on the appraisal, they'll go out to the car lot and try and find their BMW or a BMW similar to it, and they're like, oh, they're selling this BMW for $25,000. I guess that's what I'm going to get offered. And it's like, no, that's not how it works. So there's a lot of people that think they're, selling retail and they're going to, and I'm like, I'm not going to compete with you, and I'm not going to go back and forth and this. And I'm like, all right, maybe I'll sit this one out this time and the next time. But I'm sure there's some circles, and, maybe it takes going to one of these fairs and, making those connections. I mean, it's kind of like whenever you go to those trade shows, whether it's, Lawn and Garden or SHOT Show in Vegas or something like that. Yeah. You need to be face to face with these people and make those connections, and then, opportunity will present itself. So,
yeah, I mean, the relationship building and community, I mean, I can't talk about it enough, honestly, right? It doesn't matter what it is that we're into, as much as like the Lego investing side of things, right? Kind of feels like a solo activity, but in reality, it's much better as a community-based activity, right? If we come together and we share our experiences and our ideas, we can help really boost each other up. And that's a lot about why, and I'm assuming you're well aware of that. And that's why you put all the information that you do out there, right? It's this concept of, look, I want to share this information with the world. And then likewise, some of those people reach out to you and they share some more information with you. And all of a sudden we're both benefiting from this.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I enjoy putting out the information. I really enjoy the hate mail I get from people saying, why are you putting out this information? But at the same time, I did it for selfish reasons too. So I could have people reach out to me, because I didn't know anybody when I first did the YouTube channel in 2016 or whatever. But, sure enough, people are, and now, I know a lot of people. So my YouTube channel, serves that purpose. And recently it's become a lurking mechanism for people on BrickPicker too, to do screenshots and stuff like that. So it pleases me whenever I see a bunch of curmudgeon resellers on BrickPicker. Chat about me sarcastically. So cool. So are there you've done the shows, you're a veteran with that, you're doing the Bricklink. What else, like, are you, like, how concerned are you on growth? I'm sure you want to grow your things, but here's the thing for me, and let me answer that question first. When I first got into it, right, I was like, piss and vinegar, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And eventually, things start at one time that was fast and quick turned into like a slow moving dinosaur, right? So I'm happy to continue to be successful, but with children and other responsibilities, it's I just don't have that time, or I'm a worn down old man right now. So what are your visions in regards of your business and the future?
I'm a big thinker, and so I love to dream and kind of put the I'm a very goal oriented person, and so it's always got to be the what's next, and when I'm there, it's not okay, well, it's time to kick back and relax. It's, well, I've already got the next 3 steps ahead of me. I started with the Bricklink. I started building with my son, moved into Bricklink, and that kind of stemmed from, I found all these sets that were on clearance at Walmart and Target and whatever, and I couldn't pass it up because I'm like, man, I know what I'm spending on these things, and now I'm getting them for half off. I have to buy these. Right. And so then I bought them in bulk, and all of a sudden I had 100 and some sets sitting in my basement that I'm like, what in the world am I going to do with these things? And then I'm like, oh, look, the value of them on Bricklink. Okay, well, I can do that. Very time consuming, but I did it, and it was fun, and I do still enjoy it. But then I started saying, okay, well, like, look, I've got a lot of these sets. And then I found your channel actually, and kind of thought, you know what, thinking about it as an investment made sense. I had looked at it as flipping for a period of time. Like, okay, well, I bought it 50% off. Well, I'll sell it when it's back to MSRP price and people can't get it. And then I thought, well, after hearing a lot of your stories and stuff, it was, well, why am I stopping at MSRP? Look, I'm a patient person. I can sit on this thing for another year and a half. And then all of a sudden, if I'm making 2 or 3 time MSRP, like, well, that's fantastic. Like, why in the world would I let that money go? Right. And so the investment side is definitely been growing, and that's stemming from the same thing you were just talking about there, right? I got 2 kids, one's 7 and one's 2, and they are a handful. My wife also likes when I spend time with her. So that's a bonus, spending time there. And it's about that time division. Is I spend a little bit of time in each of those different categories. And my, obsessive all in kind of attitude and personality make that a challenge. Balance is not my strong suit in my life. And so I usually have something out of whack. Whether it's my day job that I, all of a sudden find myself working 60, 70 hours a week there. And then I get a little bit of family time in and a little bit of business time. And then other times it's okay, well, the day job ended up being a 40-hour week. Great. And then all of a sudden it's 20 or 30 hours into between the YouTube and the investments and the Bricklink and the,
yeah, I was going to say, and you got your YouTube channel too. So, I mean, it's just, I started this new job, and at 6 o'clock, I'm like, all right, the bell rang. Like, why is everybody like, I need to go home. I need to do,
I've got other stuff I want to do.
Yeah. I was like, I need to knock out this evening routine. So I have the opportunity to sit down and chat with you. And it's just a never ending snowball, but eventually there will be time, just not today.
Yeah. And that's what the different avenues, honestly, I call it diversification in a lot of ways. But the difference between the Bricklink and the investment is that, well, the investment isn't time consuming for me, right? Yeah, you have to be very financially stable to be allowed to put that much stuff on a shelf and let it sit there for long periods of time, not worrying about the cash flow. But that's the other choices that I've made have made that possible. And so when I find that, work gets busier or life gets busier, well, the Bricklink stuff gets put to the back burner. The YouTube stuff, I've been making a point to try and be more consistent there. And I put it back on my own time, and that's by making a point to get ahead. Like, I've got all of the next 2 weeks videos already scheduled, ready to go. And I'm working on the videos 3 weeks out. it took a long time to get there. And it was that when my balance got swayed to the point of focusing on the YouTube channel, I went all in over there, got myself ahead so that now, basically on a weekly basis, my goal is, okay, well, I need to make 3 videos because that's what'll feed another week, because that's the content that I churned through. But if I don't, I can do 4 next week. Or, hey, I found I had a little more time this week. Why don't I do 4 or 5 and get a couple, videos ahead? And that's the game that I played. So now I've got kind of this balance. And it's the same thing with, with your investments and your cash flow, is that, look, once you get to a point where you have this little bit of a surplus, you're able to play the game better yourself, because you're not worried about where that next hour is coming from or where that next dollar is coming from to make your investment.
Yeah. God bless you, man. I wish I had time for planning out my YouTubes. I mean, I got some stuff in mind. I was in California last week, and I took some video of the shipping containers, and I'm gonna talk about that and things of that stuff.
That kind of one of those weird in our space. That's a little bit of that double-edged sword, where you're kind of like, oh man, that's kind of a bummer, but at the same time, you're like, well, shoot, I guess it's going to be a good year.
Right. Yeah. And it's interesting how that's going to progress.
Yeah.
So cool. Are there any sets that, you're looking forward to coming out? And I don't even know if, like, let's say the Home Alone house, is that a set that, like, you say to yourself as a Bricklinker, that's something I would benefit from immediately parting out? Or is that something that it's like, that's on my list, but not, something that's an immediate need for my Bricklink store?
Yeah, so that's interesting. I don't know that I have I don't know that I have as deep a knowledge as would be required to be able to identify a brand new set that they show you the picture on the box. I don't have part knowledge that deep and history that deep, and I can't remember that. So in terms of Bricklink, look, if the data is not there in terms of what pieces are in there, and therefore I can just pull up and say, hey, what's the part out value for this set? I'm not going to look forward to it until I can have that data, right? If that's some of the due diligence that I do, is I'm not going to take the gamble and order 100 of a set if I'm like, well, I don't know, maybe it's going to part out for $110. I don't want to spend that time.
Right. Okay. Are there any sets just as a personal collector that you're looking forward to this year, next year?
Yeah. So there's, I do enjoy building Lego, although out of all the different time buckets, that's the one that has not been very prominent in my life here recently. The modular buildings tend to be pretty key. There's this, I don't know whether to call it rumor or whether it's news at this point, but the next modular that they're talking about, which I believe is slated for January of 2022, I think it's been somehow referred to as like mini modular. But I've also heard it's like this, I'm going to call it a corner building, but it almost looked like it was kind of a peninsula or something from what I was seeing or reading about it. And
like the Flatiron building?
What's that?
Similar to the Flatiron building, where it's like, it's not a corner, but it's a narrow
like
building.
A slice. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's what I've heard about it. I think is that it comes to a little bit more of the peak, I think, like the Flatiron does.
Okay.
So I don't know for sure. I won't know until I see it, but I love the modulars. They're probably the one series that, regardless of my own personal collection that I decide to let go, I don't think I'll likely let go of the modulars. I also don't know that I'll ever have them all, though, because I can't justify going and spending $2,000 or $4,000 on a greengrocer or
right.
What is it? Cafe Corner is the other really insane one right now.
Well, you could partner with one of your Bricklink buddies and then strike a deal.
I mean, I'm sure that I could barter away with it. It's just one of those things. I still know what I'm spending on it, whether it's in trade or whether it's in dollars and cents. It all factors in. Honestly, it's a lot of the reason why right now I've got Ninjago City that I bought for myself that I was super excited about. I bought the docks, I bought the gardens, and I haven't built any of them yet. And so I was looking at it going, oh, okay, well, maybe I'll have to start building that soon. And then I looked up, which maybe is a mistake on my part. I looked up the sealed value of Ninjago City all of a sudden. And I'm like, holy smokes, I spent $300 on that. It's valued at around $1,000.
Right.
Like, am I really going to crack the seals on that box now? Like I start questioning myself, because right now the thing that brings me a lot of joy is it's the success of the business almost. And so I get just as much joy right now out of that as I do out of building the sets.
Yeah. And when it comes to Ninjago, I'm really happy that Ninjago has succeeded. Like, I remember when Ninjago first came out, it wasn't like the Chima, but it was similar, and
it has a similar feel. They were both cartoon based, I believe, too, right?
Yeah, and it's just grown and started to get a solid following, and that's cool because there's more popular sets that will be created and sold.
Ninjago's been a very, I don't know about for you, but I've had dabblings at least in Ninjago, and honestly, even some of the sets that I thought were going to be losers that I ended up picking up on clearance, I'm like, holy smokes, there's no way that thing's going for this price. I mean, it's just astronomical what some of these silly things are going for.
And I mean, in like another 10 years, you're going to have, adult Ninjago fans, right?
I mean, in all fairness, right? I mean, it's had, what is it, 9 or 10 seasons so far.
Right.
So you're talking 9 or 10 years old. Well, pretty soon the kids that were 7, they're 17 now.
Right.
They're going to be looking for a Ninjago movie that's a real action movie, not a Lego one, right?
Right. Oh, that would be bad to the bone right there. I would love that.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. There's really nothing other than the Home Alone house that I'm looking forward to. The tumbler too, the new tumbler.
Yeah, that one looks nice. I think you have the older one, don't you?
I do. It's about 8 feet in front of me right now. But yeah, it's cool. I mean, it's sealed in the box. I mean, it's going to stay that way for some time, right?
That's okay.
But yeah, but I really need to start committing to buying larger sets just just to put them in the cold storage for for a rainy day.
Yeah, they're nice. You can see some amazing returns on some of them, and I think it comes from just less people buy those in general, right? Everyone's got $20 or $40 in their pocket to go buy a set, and so a lot more of them are made and produced because they sell a lot more of them, which means a lot more people have them. The other ones, they're more exclusive, more rare. They come and they go, and I don't know any of Lego's actual sales numbers, but it seems like they do really well. I try and stay away from it just because of the risk involved. Right, when you're selling on Amazon FBA or whether you're selling on eBay, like a return or a fraudulent return of one of those sets, like it hits your profit line a lot harder than someone scamming a $20 or $40 set.
Well, and that's another thing too. There's about 8 reasons why when it comes to reselling large sets, it's not conducive to my business model. Like if you drop the Coliseum in, a corner gets dinged. I mean, that's a pretty big corner. I mean, there goes 20% of your return on investment right there.
Yeah.
Credit card fraud, right? Like I've been fortunate to not have credit card fraud, but I know a few people who have, and this is just me, but I prefer to have a $40 credit card fraud come my way versus an $800 credit card fraud. So, there's a lot of factors involved.
I also feel like in general, right, fraudulent cases are more likely to probably stem off of something that has a higher reward to them, right? If I get this $800 or $1,000 Ninjago City, if I posted it on eBay or whatnot, well, it's probably going to be a larger target to somebody who's using a fraudulent card because they make a single transaction, they walk away with this thing, they go out and they flip it for $600, and it was worth it to them with a single point of risk.
Right. Are there any sets that spring of next year that you're looking forward to?
So I haven't been great about knowing which new sets have been coming out here recently. I haven't dipped into the news a whole lot. I'm trying to think. I feel like there's a new line that I just heard was coming out, and I want to say it's like I'm going to say a children's line or something based off of another cartoon that I remember being excited about, and I can't remember the name of it for the life of me.
Okay. I know for me, there's man, it's just weird for me to say this because like 18 months ago, I was not like the biggest Star Wars Lego person, and now it's like I'm just bought and sold into it. But there's quite a few cool Lego Star Wars sets, and that's one of the things I need to do a video on. There's going to be a Mandalorian helmet. There's going to be what else is there? There's an X-wing where it's almost like I forget what you call those, but it's a small X-wing where it's going along the path on the Death Star, and it's like
a trench run scene.
Yeah, the trench run. Yeah. Sorry, that took forever. Nice. But and there's a few other Star Wars. I'm like, wow, these things are really cool, and they're like, mini, pieces. It's not just a playset, which it could be, I guess, but these are like mini standalones, which I think is cool. So it'll be interesting to see what else
is it in the vein of those Star Wars gift with purchases that came out during was it those I forget what they had. They had Tatooine, they had Endor and Hoth, I think, the 3 sets.
I don't believe these are going to be gift with purchases. There is something coming out that's a gift with purchase. I can't remember. There's just so much information, right? It's like I need a break from Lego for one day just so I don't hate it, which I don't. But it's like I never want to be that worn down old man. That's like, let me tell you about Lego, son, in our days. But
and so it's hard. So you stay on top of a lot of the new stuff coming out, and I'm kind of curious. Is that because of let me, I guess, maybe share with the audience here, right? I think that I tend to go very wide in my investment in terms of Lego, right? And I think, Jim, you go very deep in terms of your investment. You pick, here's my half a dozen, whatever the number is, winners in essence, and you go 300, 400, 500 deep in those particular sets. Versus me, I shotgun spray all over the place in terms of, well, that one's a deal and this is a deal and I can't stop from spending money, so I'm going to go and get them. And so maybe I'll have, some of my deeper ones are 40 or 50 deep, but I've got, I don't even know, hundreds and hundreds, probably 300 or 400 different SKUs in essence that I would say I carry right now.
Wow.
And not all of them are quite that deep. There's plenty enough that I have in here that I'm like, oh, well, shoot, it was 50% off and they had 2 on the shelf. So I bought 2 of those, and it does translate into more work to sell, but I tend to go after, that's why the new sets coming out is something that I don't follow as closely, because I'm more looking at which ones are on their way out, right? That's when I try and target buying. But do you try and stay on top of them? Because when you choose that winner, it takes you the life of the set while it's on a shelf to amass that many, or?
So that's an interesting question. I think right now why I'm kind of interested in the new releases is because, we already know what sets are going to retire at the end of the year. We've known that for a long time. And, I've just recently, for those of you that don't know, which is when I say those of you that don't know, I mean practically 99.9% of the people out there, I have compiled retirement lists from 2021 to 2026 that I will be sharing with everybody very soon. And that takes time. And you have to, it's like a curator at a museum. And so, I need a break from that. And and it's interesting because if you're a reseller, I'm not saying you should only focus on what's going to retire, but that should be, what am I buying now and what can I sell now? So for me, it's kind of like a nice break. And this is the first time in, I just want to say forever, where there's so many freaking cool sets that Lego has come out with, right?
Oh
Because
man.
I said in that Titanic video, I was like, listen, the last video I did, I said, you know, I wasn't going to do any more, you know, soon to be released videos. And then the Titanic came out. Then, you know, I get this encrypted email from somebody that says, hey, let's check out the Home Alone set. And there were some details that I forgot to put in that video that I put out earlier today. There's and I'm just going to mention this. There is a light brick that I think represents the fireplace or something like that. I'm not exactly sure how the brick is lit, but there's that, and there's just so many rooms. Because I was in the video, I was like, oh, you mentioned the stairs going up to the attic, the Christmas tree, and a bathroom. There's just so many rooms. I should have counted the rooms, and if I knew it wouldn't take forever, I would look it up on my phone right now. But so where was I? I have no idea. But no, there's so many cool sets that Lego's coming out. I'm like, you guys are knocking it out of the park. I mean, kudos to you.
For sure. And I think that speaks to a lot of their 18 plus marketing that they've been going after, right? That's been their big push here recently, is this adult centric thing. And here we are. And I mean, there's a ton of, you know, whether it's the Ford Raptor, I enjoy that set, that new vintage pickup truck. That thing's amazing.
Beautiful.
I mean, they've got a lot of sets out there. You got the, you know, the Space Theme. You got the, what is it? The Discovery ship that just came out. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's really cool that is available right now. That's all just released in this, you know, recent window. The Mario 64 set, the giant Hogwarts icon set. That thing. Oh my God, I love that. That piece of paper in there, which, you know, is printed pieces, but man, it just looks so real. It just blows my mind. You know, if only the price point weren't what it was.
Right. And to answer another part of your question, so if I had to guess how many SKUs I have, and I need to update that list to on the Patreon, I think right now I probably have around 70, which is as far as I'm concerned, enough. And you know, a couple of years ago I only had 15, and I thought that was enough. And you know, I know people that have hundreds, and I know people that have hundreds, and they have, you know, quantity 2, quantity 5. I'm like, wow. But here's the deal: it's kind of like a different model. If you go to a Walmart and you see a bunch of stuff clearanced, and there are some 1s and 2s. And I don't know what your approach is, but I would, you know, if I was in that situation, I would almost approach them as the same way I approach damaged sets, where you know, it's something I'm going to pay attention to, but not now. Like, you know, every other holiday season, I'm going to be like, okay, these piles of damaged sets are getting too big. I'm just going to start taking pictures, because you have to do that, and start posting them on eBay and things of that sort. So if I had, you know, quantity 10, I'd be like, all right, I'm going to list it at the appropriate time. But if not, it's like, all right, I'm probably going to wait till next Q4 for that.
Yeah, so not my experience. I'm the other way. It's that shotgun spray thing.
Right.
If it's 50% off. That's my rule. 50% off, I'm going to pick it up.
Yeah.
If there's a single one, if there's a dozen different sets and one of each of them, I'm walking out of that store with 12 different sets. Now, I'm probably going to go and try and stop at another Meijer, Walmart, Target, wherever it is that I got that, and see if I can't maybe find some similar ones there as well to increase that quantity if possible. But I mean, I've got a fair amount of one-offs even that, I mean, it is more work, 100%. And it really does, you know, come down to that effort, right? If you got that 300 or 400 deep, you've got one listing, and then you're honestly, it's easier to satisfy your, you get a little technical here, but your IPI, I'm assuming, because it just comes up for restock and you send it in. I constantly have to be monitoring my listings and make sure that, oh yeah, that one went out of stock and I have no way to restock that. So I need to close that listing before they start bringing my IPI score down and getting dangerous.
Yeah. I think the most I've had on one SKU that was the Guggenheim Museum, the Lego architecture. I think I had like 413 of those or something like that.
That's a lot.
And that was not by design. Back whenever I had a wholesaler that I dealt with, I ordered like 206, and then she called me back 2 weeks later and was like, "Hey, they just accidentally double shipped me. Do you want these?" And I was like, "Well, I'll make you a deal," because she did not want to send them back. And I said, "Well, I'll make you a deal." I said, "If you're able to wait 10 days, because that's how long it takes to get a 0% credit card mailed to your house." I said, "If you wait 10 days, I will buy them all up." And that's exactly what she did. And, the UPS guy, he rings the doorbell. He's like, "Are you ready to work?" I'm like, "Well, I'm ready to open up the garage door." That's all you, my friend. And that was it. And I'm sitting, I'm like, man, like, I'm glad these are Frank Lloyd Wright. If they weren't Frank Lloyd Wright, I don't know what I would do with this stuff. But it worked out in the end.
You've gotten rid of all those, I think, now, haven't you?
Yeah, I don't even have. There's usually one set of something. Like, I keep on referring to that Santa's Workshop, which is right here. And the reason why I always refer to it is because it's always right there. But I got a Lego Ecto 1, the Ideas one. I'm actually thinking about using that as a giveaway. But I have the original Saturn V rocket.
I've got a few of those. Barnes and Noble, I'm guessing.
Yeah, and I got some stuff. I mean, I still have an architecture studio. I think I have a slave one that I haven't opened, that like the UCS slave one.
Oh, nice.
And maybe one day I'll do an episode on going down memory lane and the Lego sets in Jim's cold storage.
Yeah. And you could the history of winners or something, right?
The history of winners.
The history of winners.
And then I'll pull out the Teddy Ruxpin and like the history of losers. But
people love it. Honestly, you probably get more success off of sharing your failures than you do your successes.
Right. So, well, cool. Anything else you want to chat about?
So I've got a big one that I've been curious about, and it's an item that I'm still looking into. So there is one area that I would like to say that very much admitting failures here is that I have a risk that I am looking to mitigate, and I'm curious how you have mitigated this.
Sure.
And it has to do with your inventory. How do you insure it?
So that's great. And I'm glad you asked that question on here, because I've thought about doing a video on this. And the problem with that is I was like, man, there's really going to be a short video. And I'm like, is it worth it? So, and if there's anybody watching this that knows more about insurance when it comes to Lego sets, please put those comments below. I'm all ears. So let me walk with you when it comes to Lego insurance. So, I'm collecting all these Lego sets, and, I'm no excuse other than I'm just a guy. And I'm like, I don't need insurance for this. And my wife is like, you're not going to get insurance for these Legos? I'm like, hell no, I'm not going to get insurance. And so, I go on Brick Picker, and there's some people, it's like, oh yeah, I have insurance. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And I got my I's dotted and T's crossed. And then, you have E-Mazers, who's a former person on Brick Picker. He's like, that's ridiculous. So when I lived in Columbus, Ohio, to appease my wife, and she doesn't listen to these videos, she's like, listen, you really need to get insurance on these Legos. And I'm like, okay. So I called up my local insurance company, and that time we were renting because we weren't sure if we were going to stay in Columbus or not. So we were renting a house. And the guy's like, well, we could only insure the first $10,000. And, it's only going to be like 20 more bucks a month or something like that. And I'm like, sold. So I'm like, honey, I did the right thing.
A rider on your rental insurance then is
pretty much. And so, the fulfillment center that I use, they have insurance on everything. The problem is, and I'm sure it's this, and I do have some sets here because even though most of the stuff is in a warehouse somewhere, if I see a good deal at Target or something, I'm like, okay, I'll grab that, right? So I'm accumulating small inventory here. The problem is, let's say, and I always use this example, let's say you have 100 falling waters, right? And that set is around, I don't know where it is now. Let's just say 500, right?
Sure.
So you have, what is that? That's 50,000, right? You're able to turn 10,000 into 50,000. If there is water damage or a fire or whatever like that, the insurance company will only insure what the RRP price was.
So you're saying proven cost,
right? Yeah. Proven cost. So it's not going to be like, oh, which kind of makes sense, right? Because you could buy an art piece, appraise it as something, and whatever.
Sure.
But so there are insurance companies that will insure. Some are only to a certain limit, and even if you go to a storage facility, I know quite a few people that use storage units. There's a limit there. And they don't want to insure anything over that limit, right? And that's just the way of life. So, that's something that insurance companies really aren't familiar with. If there were some savvy insurance companies out there, I'm sure they would, deal with resellers exclusively. But is that something that you've dealt with, or is that something that you've run into?
Yeah, so it's something I've been looking into a lot, and a lot of mine might stem from the concept of I am not using a fulfillment center for mine,
right?
And so the bulk of my stuff is right behind this camera, which means, look, if catastrophic situation happens, home burns down, yeah, sad for the home. I'm almost just about as sad for this brick behind me,
right?
And so. I've been looking into, and I've kind of, conceptualized a couple different routes. There are insurance companies for collectibles. So there are collectible insurance companies. And one of the key phrases that I've heard, and I haven't had these quoted yet, unfortunately, but key phrases that I've been hearing is that you need to make sure that what you're asking for is insurance on replacement value, right? So not cost, but replacement value. So, if you have, a lot of people do this with their collectibles in general, right? Oh, I've got a $100,000 antique vase or something like that. Well, it only costs this. Well, what's my replacement value of it, right? Same thing with your home. You get replacement value on your home because as your home appreciates in value over time, well, if you only had material cost of your home, they're going to give you your your state equalized value and say, well, there's the cost of your home. And you're like, well, I can't get my home for that anymore. Like I can go buy a trailer down the road. That's about all I can afford now. And so replacement value insurance is what I've heard is kind of the thing to go after. And I have heard that collectible companies will end up doing that. I'm assuming that that's not inexpensive. And I would expect most insurance not to be inexpensive, depending on the amount that you're looking to insure. But, I'm looking at whatever, I don't know, hopefully insuring at some point, at least up to $250,000 to $500,000. And so that's going to come at a cost. So I was exploring the concept of looking at different avenue. And because we have businesses, I'm like, well, what do large businesses do with inventory, right? They've got millions of dollars of inventory in a place and they need to insure that. And so I think there may be some inventory insurance that may be available. And I think you may be able to get that in replacement value as well, so that you could get back to that point of re-getting your inventory. Just so happens to be that our inventory continues to increase in price over time. That may be a loophole to one of those systems, though. So these are the different avenues. I was hoping you had some, here's what I do. Here's this great answer that I can share with you and everyone.
No, I'm sorry. And let me tell you a story. And I should consider myself lucky, right? So I have some boxes and they go up to my head, and I have like this little pathway where I walk into this part of my basement and I do my videos. So a couple months ago, I do the dishes. We got a new General Electric dishwasher, and I go downstairs, and it looks like the ceiling of the basement is a little bit wet. And I touch it, and it's in the middle of the boxes, or so it's, you know, it's where the aisle is.
Yeah.
And, you know, me being a man, I say to myself, you know what, I'm just going to ignore that, and hopefully that will be a one-time thing. Right. And so I'm doing the dishes again, and I'm like, wait a second, this floor seems kind of soggy, or like, what's going on? And I go back downstairs, and there's this huge puddle. Now, fortunately, it's on the carpet, and it was like so perfect, it didn't, you know, touch a single Lego set. But I was like, man, if it, because it would have gone through the boxes. And in general, like, we weren't with a dishwasher for 2 weeks because there's like this defective part, and they had to replace it. And nobody needs to know about that. And that was 3 months ago. And we just got a new floor from the insurance company. Speaking about insurance, but yeah, I was like, wow, like that, it threaded the needle, and I just missed water damage, probably to maybe $1,000 worth of sets. And I consider myself lucky. But here, and I don't know how you do it. This is just me because, you know, in another life I was in food and beverage.
Okay.
But you know, I have things 6 inches off the floor, like I have pallets, just in case the sub pump fails or something like that. And
yeah, so we've done that as well. Obviously, with our spaces in the basement, these are things that we have to be concerned with, right? We have water above our heads, and so that is a concern. Which is why when I put my shelving up, I made a point to look to say, well, where do my water lines run? And I'm going to make sure that they're at least a foot away from any primary storage. Now, as your basement fills up, inevitably every space becomes filled.
Right.
But yeah, I've got a California basement type ceiling where it's all open. I don't have drop ceiling down here. And so I can see exactly where my water lines are. And I'm like, all right, here's the path. And it's like right in front of me. But I've got at least another 18, 24 inches between that and where my actual shelving unit is. And that was very much intentional. My sump pump crock, I did end up having an experience a long time ago before Lego where my sump pump did fail. And it did start to, I didn't get the crazy inches in my basement, but back by that crock, man, like it was at least probably an inch back there.
Right.
And so then I installed a second sump pump, and we've got a whole home generator. So if power goes out, those things aren't stopping for the life of them. And that was a little bit about giving myself peace of mind for when I'm not at the home to be able to address those things. Was my, it's my insurance policy internally for my sanity. But yeah, I mean, I've got shelving, and for the most part, I don't have Lego boxes sitting on the floor, minus the stuff that's currently in prep. Like I've got a pile to my left and a pile to my right. That's stuff that I'm getting prepped to be boxed and sent into Amazon right now. I've got a section back here on the left that's all these Target clearance deals that came up recently that I bought a ridiculous amount of. So those are kind of sitting there on the floor a little bit, but beyond that, everything's on a shelf that's at least, I mean, my lowest shelf is probably 4 or 5 inches off the ground.
Right.
Yeah. Plenty enough space in general.
Cool.
But it's it's that thing of like, look, you never know. And so that's where I'm like, it's enough that's here that, I've got my home insured. So as heartbreaking as that would be to lose a home and that big of a thing and go through all that stuff, like it's insured to give you peace of mind. Like that's part of the reason why you do that. And as my Lego investment has grown over time and how I plan to keep growing it, it's something that if I don't have that peace of mind, I'm going to go crazy. So I need to find some avenue for it, whether it's renting storage units so that I can specifically just put them in there just purely for the insurance factor. I mean, that could be a thing.
Right. The what other questions do you have?
So I was curious a little bit about I wrote it down here is how do you determine your target ROIs? So you put together all these videos, right? And I'm going to say from a viewer's perspective, and this is something I think that everyone watching this video is curious about. Like you're like, oh yeah, let's say that you get 250% on this one or 350%, here's your profit and everything. And we're talking a lot about this hypothetical space because we're talking about predicting the future is what we're putting on a piece of paper, right?
Right.
And so I'm curious, how do you come up with what you think that future number is, and how do you treat that in terms of when you make your move? Is it that number or bust, or as you move forward, do you continue to think and possibly adjust your plan based on performance?
So that's an interesting question again, for a couple reasons. One is I'm actually putting together a presentation on that for the Patreon members. And I'm not trying to plug the Patreon because I think it's closed right now, so people couldn't join it if they wanted to. But another thing is, the interesting thing about Morgan coming to the YouTube channel is when you talk to other seasoned resellers, you don't necessarily need to be as nuanced when it comes to explaining things and stuff like that. So the good thing about Morgan is, she's asking me a question, and I'm just going to be honest. I'll say to myself, so that's an easy one. Why wouldn't you know that? But I'm like, well, wait a second. And so now I'm trying to it's me trying to answer her question is forcing me to dissect, the methods that I use that, I guess is second nature to me now. Right.
Sure.
So there are many things. So, it's past performance on, past themes. So the reason why I say Speed Champions is a theme that you could phone in is because more or less, for a fact, if you buy a discounted Speed Champion set for, 20% off, 30% off, depending on a Target store or something like that, for a fact, 18 months from now, you're going to have a 250% return on investment, right? So you just get into that habit of scooping up the Speed Champions and the Minecrafts, and things of that sort. Now, for me, let's talk about the U.S. Capitol for a couple reasons. One, because that's an example I haven't used before. So I said to myself a while ago, I said, and this was a while ago, I said, you know what? I'm just going to stay away from buying Lego sets that are government buildings, right? I'm just not going to do that. But the more I was thinking about it, I was like, well, wait a second. And I was like, well, you did have some success with the White House, the first White House. And I said, Jim, and not to get too much into detail, but there was I know people, like there was a senatorial candidate who ran for Senate and won, and I worked on that campaign. Whenever I went to Ohio, I really didn't know anything else but politics, so I knocked on the door of the state party and I introduced myself as, hey, Jim, I'm down in Kentucky. They're like, oh yeah, we actually know, through friends who you are. So I'm looking at these U.S. capitals, and I'm like, there's going to be some political action committees that are going to want a ton of these just for gifts and whatever. There's every time a kid goes to the Capitol for a school trip. Yeah, I'm like, this set is going to be a gold mine. And there's from both ends, from greedy politicians to kids, from grandmas that want to give that set to their kids. And I'm like, you know what? I'll take some greedy politicians' money anytime. So I was like, okay, I'm going to buy that set for $75. Retails $100, and then come out with over 100% return on investment, which is what I did. So that was an example, but I don't believe I answered your question as good as what I could.
Let's use that one as an example there, right? So you talked about you bought it for 75. Obviously, MSRP was 100, right? And when let's say that set was out there today, right? You're gonna when you put together one of your spreadsheets and share it with all of us viewers, it would be that concept of like, well, you're gonna put 200 over there, or maybe it's 250, or maybe it's 300, right? There's some system that you have to choose what that number is. I can't believe that it's just an arbitrary, you going, I think that's 250. We'll just throw that over there because it looks good. Like, I don't think that's the case. And so I'm curious, why 250 versus 200 on one? And then obviously the second part of it would be how strong do you commit to that number that you chose?
So going back to the Capitol, I guess the reason why I thought that was going to be a winner was because I just felt in my heart that people were going to spend the money for that. And this is going a little bit off, but I'm going to bring it back. So if you Google, and it's been a while since I've done this, like the top 20 vices or something like that, you'll see that people spend X billions of dollars on soda a year, X billions of dollars on cigarettes, right? So I'm like, people have money. I mean, I had a banner year last year when it came to Lego, and unemployment was over 10%. It's very counterintuitive, counterintuitive. So I strongly felt that people would spend money on that. Now, if we're talking about a smaller set, and I'll use the Seattle Space Needle, right? So Seattle Space Needle, I believe, was around $20, and there you go, right there.
I'm like, I just got one of those.
Right. I believe it was $20. I was able to get it for like 16 or 17.
Wow, is that how cheap that set was? It was a $20 set.
Discounted with your Barnes and Noble membership and discounted gift cards.
That's crazy.
I knew that if I were going to double my money when it comes to RRP, because I got it for less, I knew $40 was a reasonable amount of money for someone to spend for a gift. That's why and I've said this before, and I'm saying it for the benefit of the conversation, because I believe I said I'm going to stop talking about it. But that's why, if you look at my top 3 ROIs from last year, they were all under $20 RRP. They were all, between the ages of 4 and 6. So there was, people are able to spend, $30-$40 on a set I got for 15, and I'm making, decent ROI. So I hope I was able to answer that question a little bit more.
Yeah, close. I'll go with, I think I get how you're choosing your winners. The difference in percentage or whatever, and how you so let's veer away from that real briefly here and say, let's say you have in your mind, like the Space Needle, for instance, you had in your mind like, okay, it'll get to 40, right? So is 40 the number that you set in your mind and say, when I can sell it for 40, that's when I sell, regardless of whether that's 12 months or 18 months, or after you see it trending, you look at it after 12 months and go, look, this thing's only at 30 right now. Boy, I'm probably going to have to sit on this for another 12 months before I'm going to hit that 40. It's best to just unload this thing and move on to the next thing to try and get a winner.
So 90% of the time, I hold fast to my price that I put. Now, there are some exceptions. I know the last year for myself that I was doing eBay during Q4, which those 3 months, that was a full-time job. I said to myself, listen, this one set is not selling at all, right? And I had high expectations. It wasn't at the price that I thought it should be. But because I was doing so well with all the other sets, I said, you know what? I can afford, it shouldn't be a big deal to, take $7 off this price. Or $10 off this price. And so I was able to get some sales velocity. Now there is an exception for different circumstances. This was before I realized how much of a boom COVID was going to be. So before, I think COVID hit in March, and June is when it just took off, starting of May. And I know for myself, I had like $35,000 worth of credit card debt that was due in June. Right. And what I mean by that is that's when the 0% APR offer was going to expire. And I did not have $35,000 in the bank.
Sure.
right? And I'm like, I'm flying fast and low to the ground, right? And I'm like, well, I got these 400 Guggenheims, right? So I sold about 25% of my Guggenheims,
Okay.
and at a ROI of only 40%,
Hmm.
which is not a lot.
Nope.
But at the same time, in retrospect, I was like, you're still making money. You're not making money hand over fist, but you're getting rid of your credit card debt without interest.
That's
right?
real important.
That's yeah. Let's be honest here. And because I had so many of them, the last one I sold, the ROI on that was around 169% ROI.
Okay.
So it averaged out, if I had to guess, probably still around 100% ROI, maybe a little bit more. Right. And then once I had that 35,000 I needed to pay off the credit card debt, then I turned the spigot off and I raised the price and I was good to go. So so I hope that was a better answer.
Yeah, for sure. So it sounds like, look, you come up with here's what you're looking for it to perform, whether it's 100%, 200%, whatever that target is, and that's your target. And because of where you're at, and I think I'll key this into at least the other viewers here and say, this is where patience is key.
Right.
Is that, you can't necessarily expect like, oh, well, it's going to be the 3 months or 6 months flip. And, I've got my my free 100% return all of a sudden, and now I can let it go. If it takes longer, it takes longer, but just be patient with it and know that, look, inevitably, as these things continue to be purchased, get opened, the rarity in essence will end up increasing to the point that sooner or later it's going to hit. And I don't want to say whatever your target is. I'm sure we could all pick a number that maybe some sets would never hit, but the majority of them, as long as you're being reasonable there, it will hit it. And you would rather say, look, yeah, I bought this expecting that, I can probably get my 200% in 18 months, but find out that, well, look, I had to wait 28 months to get the percentage that I wanted. But the important part is that you were getting the return you wanted, maybe minus those couple scenarios there where you had to be concerned with the cash flow.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure on that. It's I've been more mixed in terms of what my target is, my return that I'm looking for out of them. I kind of set the bar and say, look, I don't want to flip anything until I can get at least 100% return. Like if I can't get 100% return, I will bury that thing with me when I go, because why, right? If I'm going that route, a lot of people might say, well, look, if you just get rid of that and reinvest that money over into a different vessel, maybe it would be smarter.
60% ROIs for losers.
Now, it's that funny thing of like, look, it's not year over year though. And so, well, yeah, 100%, but it took me 10 years to get there. Well, it probably wasn't the best investment all of a sudden, right? And sometimes we make those mistakes. I've got a shelf full of Lego Movie 2 stuff behind me that would speak to that. Definitely not the best performer for most of the sets. I've got a couple back there that are, those things are doing fantastic, and I'm going to let them take a little longer.
Right?
Yeah. There's a couple. I mean, like a couple, and that's probably about it. The rest of them, I'm like, yep, it's still less than MSRP as a generally available set. Like, well, great. But it's one of those like, okay, well, I'm a patient person, and those things just their time hasn't come yet. Maybe when Lego Movie 4 comes out, maybe Lego Movie 2 will be popular again. Who knows?
Right.
But yeah, I've been fluctuating a little bit more on. I've honestly, the stuff that I've been pulling here to send to Amazon FBA has been more of a desire and need for the shelf space and the storage. Storage is my biggest limitation right now. I am, you can't see behind the camera right now, but it is at capacity. And so,
I'm looking like a few inches past this camera. I'm like, Jesus.
It's a little bit rough. And so I'm saying I got creative. I've got my long-term storage is me taking all these sets that are a little bit too new that I know need to bake for at least another 12 months. And I'm like, well, good thing I've got all these Amazon and Walmart and Target boxes, because they're going back in boxes, as many as I can fit in a box. And I'm taping it back shut, labeling the side of it, and throwing it over onto the other side of the room. And that's my long-term storage right now.
Right.
Like, I don't want to look at these things because they're just going to sit there for a long period of time.
Right.
So yeah, my other stuff here, I've been pulling a lot of stuff down, going, well, okay, this one's at 200% or 300%, or this one's 120%. Like, okay, well, I'm going to be okay with that right now, just because I can pull it down. I can get that cash flow coming back in, and then it frees up space on my shelf so I can put more stuff in there. That's been a motivating factor for me, is less about the cash flow. I've been fortunate there, and I'm okay, because I look at it like an investment. It's like, well, I had this money, and I don't do the credit card route. Mine is, my personal finance. And it's one of those, like, well, the money wasn't working for me sitting in the bank. So I can either have it sit there not doing anything for me, or I can put it into something that is there risk. Sure. I don't think the risk is, I hear a lot of times refer to this whole, going to zero kind of a concept. And I'm like, I'm not saying it couldn't happen. However, knowing the Lego community and the mock builders and the whatever, like, even if Lego as a company completely fell off the face of the planet, those people aren't. Those people still have their passions. They still have their desires. They still want to get their hand on that product. So regardless of whether Lego is around making it, it's going to have some value. Now, am I going to be maybe at the 100% ROI that we all hope to be at, or higher? Well, maybe not. Maybe I got to, eat crow a little bit and get back down to the point where I'm like, well, look, I bought it for 50% off clearance, and I sold it for, 75% of MSRP. I'm like, well, I'm going to still call that a win. It's like, I didn't lose my money. So that's kind of the game I've been playing, is I'm going to bank on that being okay, put my money to work instead of sitting in a bank account, not doing anything. And hopefully I can churn it over. And my next big endeavors are trying to figure out how to increase storage capacity, whether it's outdoor building, whether it's possibly a storage facility. And then the third option that I've been exploring is possibly buying a piece of commercial real estate as another leg of investment, so that I can be paying that off over time, with the added benefit of, when I retire, maybe I take all this stuff and throw it in a physical location that I own. And that's what I spend the rest of my day doing.
So I had a meeting with my accountant a couple of weeks ago, and I actually need to email him, because I told him, I said, listen, things are going good and things are kind of status quo. And I'm sure you're like, okay, it's time for Jim's taxes for his business. We're just going to do what we normally do. I said, but let me tell you, I said, 2022 is going to be a year of change. And I told him what I was wanting to do. And he's like, wait, what? And he didn't tell me this stuff was illegal. Right. And I said to him, listen, I said, and then I was like, I can't be the only person that has told him this. I said, this is what I want. I said, and I'm toying with it, but I really, wanted to talk to him sternly, because I wanted him to not just think that I'm just shooting the shit and everything's pie in the sky. And then if I wanted to do it, he's like, oh, wait, you were serious? So I want my son, I'm toying with the idea of having my 5-year-old son buy a house.
Okay.
So, and I would like it to be in the neighborhood. And if it's in the neighborhood over, that's fine. No big deal. And he's going to be my landlord. Well, he's going to be the landlord of my Lego reselling business.
Okay.
So he will collect rent, which, if you collect rent, it's tax-free.
Yep.
And that would be an expense towards me. So I'm able to list it as an expense.
Yep.
So it is what it is.
I think I know the area you're going in 100%. People do know
like,
this loophole, and they do use it. I will say that. Maybe not with the concept of your son owning the property. That one might be a little different. But in business, what I will say is that a lot of businesses do not own the building that they are in. Yeah. Now, the owners of that business probably own a secondary business that owns the building. And it becomes this concept of, look, I don't have a locked-in lease contract, and therefore how much I pay in rent on a monthly basis can fluctuate very dramatically depending upon the income of my two businesses. Like, this one's getting a little profitable over here. Whoa, hey, we had a big sweep of rent this month.
Well, when you look at, and again, not trying to get off topic, but
Sure.
if you look at Sears, the company, right?
Okay.
Like one of the reasons why that company is, I mean, that company is failing on purpose, and it's because the owner of Sears, he he is putting all of his debt, I think, from his hedge fund that he owns, and he's transferring it over to Sears. And so the company's dying. The company went bankrupt. No one
Mhm.
was willing to buy it at auction other than the guy that the previous owner, right? So I mean that's a large scale example
Mhm.
of, and then
Sure.
I heard somebody, man, I heard this one guy saying this is just off the reservation, it has nothing to do with Lego, but
Sure.
it's only going to be 30 seconds. But I heard, like, if you go out and buy a piece of art that is like $100,000,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
then you get this certified appraiser, and
Mhm.
he appraises it for $500,000. And then you open up a 501(c), which you can do on LegalZoom.com,
Mhm.
and you donate that $5,000, half million
Mhm.
dollar painting that you only paid $100,000 for, you
Yep.
now have a $500,000
Mhm.
tax write-off.
I, I've heard that's why a lot of famous people,
Right.
millionaires, movie stars, actresses, whatever, they do a lot of art donations.
Yep.
Art is a big market, and I think it's because of a lot of the funny numbers in terms of how
Right.
value is assessed to something.
Right. But anyway,
Mhm.
enough of
Yeah.
non-Lego stuff. Any other questions you had?
No, I mean,
Okay.
I guess I got one more. I'll go one more.
Please, please
Uh,
give me them.
okay. So the next one, you've been talking a lot about diversity in marketplaces recently.
Right.
And in terms of the avenues that you use to sell your Lego. And I feel like you were very heavily Amazon, and now you're trying to balance at least the load, if not, from the sounds of it in some recent videos, sounds like you're trying to move entirely away from Amazon, or at least largely away from it. What kind of rationale behind that? I'm going the other way. I dabbled in eBay, and I'm looking at Amazon going like, man, yeah, they take higher fees, but at the end of the day, I get more net profit in the end. And it's a lot less work on me because I package it up on my time. I send it into them and they deal with it from there.
So, January, February 2023, which is not far away,
Mhm.
that's like 15 months. Uh, I'm pretty much going to be saying goodbye to Amazon. And I say that now, things may change.
Sure.
I do think by that time the prices on eBay will be higher.
Sure.
At least a little bit. I think there'll
Mhm.
be more than a little bit, but at
Yep.
least a little bit. And everybody knows why, because of that new rule.
Yep.
But eBay is just so simplified for me. I've only, when it comes to customer returns, I've had 12 people
Mhm.
submit cases for customer returns.
Okay.
All of them have lost. There is
Oh,
one person who was able to get over on me, and
okay.
it was because he lost his eBay case, but he opened up a PayPal case.
Yeah.
And the thing about it was, and I never got, and it was an architecture studio set, and I never got
Okay.
it back. And I lost this guy's address because this guy lived in Ohio, and I used to live in Ohio, and I knew where he lived. And I was like, next time I come by Pittsburgh, I'm just going to knock on his door and
Yeah.
say, "Hey, give me
Sure.
my
I'll
freaking
take my
Lego set."
return.
Right, right. And and so, and I just had a lot going on. I
Mhm.
was trying to get other stuff accomplished in the house that I couldn't do during Q4, and I just didn't get to it. So somebody got over on me. So
Okay.
I have more control.
Mhm.
It's just a lot easier for me. It's simplified when it comes to fees.
Mhm.
And that's just me. And you know, there are, and I'm just going to go there. I feel ashamed to say this, but I'm just going to go there. But there was a person, and I'm not going to mention his name because I plan on talking to him again in a couple weeks. And if he's hearing this, he'll be like, "What are you talking about? That's not what I've said." But there was a person that I interviewed on another YouTube channel, and I thought one of your questions was going to be about that for earlier, and I was like, all right, I was like, let's not go there just yet. Maybe next year, but I got a good sense from him, since he's been doing this for decades, that he's kind of the opinion where he just deliberately waits 2 years before he flips something. And he doesn't look at ROIs. He just waits till 2 years of a set has retired, and then he's going to be like, all right, what do we got? That looks good. I'm going to sell it. And I see myself, no longer being the person of 12 to 18 months. I see myself of being the person of every 2 years. Now, if you get into a rhythm where you have different years, each year is out 2 years, it'll circle back to you. But that's where I see myself going. And there's other ventures that I'm wanting to do too, and in regards to reselling or selling. I can't determine if what I'm doing is selling or it's actually reselling. And I think it might just be selling some products. It just makes more sense to me. It feels like it's a better fit. But then as we get closer, things might change. Who knows? But as of now, if this was December 2021, I'm sorry, December 2022 right now, I would say yes. In about 2 months, I plan on going to eBay. But who knows? Things may change.
So you use a third-party fulfillment center, correct?
I do.
So do they also will they do as a third-party fulfillment center eBay fulfillment?
So you asked the question, not me. So I believe I'm probably come January 2023 no longer going to use them. So it's not a matter of me telling them to point everything towards eBay. I'm probably not going to use that fulfillment center. And I don't think they know this yet. Breaking news. However, at the same time, during my videos, I have said many times, trying to plant a seed, that, hey, come January 2023, old Jimbo will probably not be
But so that's kind of funny, though, because you talked recently about how you had a Q4 where you were selling on eBay, and you were like, man, it was a full-time job, right?
Right.
That doesn't sound like the investment kind of attitude of like, well, I just want my money to kind of sit over there on a shelf, and when it comes time to claim it, I'll take it off and ship it in somewhere, and I'll sell my stock and be good to go. You're putting in all the hard labor associated with it.
Well, we'll see. So a lot of things are going to change in a couple years. So I'm hoping to, for those of you that really want to know what my life plan is, I would very much like to no longer have a full-time job. When I say full-time job, earn a paycheck from a company I don't own. Now that if that were to happen, that means I would be busy with many other things. The eBay reselling side would be one of those. Although I think that's something I could easily manage. I could stage everything and have everything very streamlined. There will be, other YouTube channels out there. I don't have a new YouTube channel yet, but I have like 10 thumbnails already made. And I've shot a lot of video. I just haven't shuffled it in together and packaged it into one video yet. And there's some things I'm probably going to be, selling. Well, not probably. I mean, I have this other stuff. And my wife and my mother-in-law is like, "You're really getting into this now too?" And I'm like, "Yeah." So,
so diversifying your investments.
Yes. And it will not be toys. So there's just a lot of other things, and there's just some needs at the house where it's really important if one parent stays home. And I don't want to say stays home, but if they're able to condense an income to where it revolves around 2 days out of the 5 business days, where you have 3 other days and then the 2 weekends to run around and take care of other things, then That's tentatively what the plan is.
Okay. So because of that, you're seeing yourself as having more time, and therefore, whether you're fulfilling these eBay things or getting into these other avenues that you're going, that's I'm still analyzing it though, because I'm still thinking like, okay, well, still what you've got your clear fees on eBay, right?
Right.
And so, yeah, you got your whatever it is, 12.5%, 13.5% final value fee. Maybe you do the marketing, 1% or whatever it is that you can do there to get your sponsorship and whatnot. But, and even if the price goes higher on there to where your value is close, let's say say you get to the point that, look, when I sell it on Amazon, it sells for 120, but I make 90 at the end of it. When I sell it on eBay, it sells for 110, but it's less fees, and so I still make 90. So complete wash, maybe. Doesn't eBay still have a lot more labor that you would still have to put into it versus Amazon?
Well, yeah. So the trade-off is, the fulfillment center takes a certain percentage out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
I know people would throw a fit if they're like, if I shared what the percentage is.
Sure. But you can remove the fulfillment center without making a different marketplace choice.
Well, yeah. So I would actually be making money because I'm fulfilling my own inventory. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right. So, but I'm also one of those people, and you may have heard me say it on YouTube in the past. If you can't hold it, you don't own it. So there's also a control factor as well, too.
For sure.
So so that's honestly, I would say that's a big piece of it.
Okay. That's fair, and that there is fear with that, right? When you send it into Amazon's fulfillment center, right? Even if you don't have the third-party fulfillment, such that you go right from your basement to Amazon, like I have had that happen. I had so the first thing I sent in as an experiment actually wasn't Lego; it was craft paint. Martha Stewart craft paint. Bought it on clearance at Michael's. And I looked it up on Amazon, and I'm like, shoot, I can 6 or 7x my money on these things because I'm paying $1 a piece for them. So I'm like, this is going to be a great tester to try and understand the experience. And I had a whole box of, I don't know what it was. It was, it was $50, $60 worth of paint. Not a whole lot of cost on my part, but it was, I don't know, 35 tubes or something along those lines that Amazon just flat out said, yeah, we can't find this package. Yeah. I'm like, well, what's that mean to me? Like, this is an interesting experience. And there were a lot of hoops you had to jump through to try and reclaim any value out of it. It worked out okay for me, but that does kind of expand upon that fear of like, look, it wasn't within my control. Like, I'm at the mercy of what Amazon wants to tell me they're able to do. And it's, it's their house, it's their rules.
Right. And, this isn't by any means a reason why I want to go back and fulfill my own stuff, but this is just an example if we're talking about control. So I don't want to, talk about what is going on in current events or anything. But, last year with those riots,
sure.
Like I'm watching the news. And they're like, oh, yeah, there's these riots going on in this city. And I'm like, wait a second, that's where my warehouse is. Let me see what street they are on, and let me see and coordinate that with the address of my warehouse. And I'm like, so I was like, and so there's when we're talking about control, that's definitely an example right there.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I definitely get that. When you feel like you've got what it takes to be successful in those things, starting to remove some of that from your control really does kind of put your business in essence at more risk than maybe sometimes you're comfortable with.
Right. And here's the deal. And my gosh, I feel like this is more about me now than you, which is fine. No, but who's to say, I don't want to open up a fulfillment center too. So, there's a lot of Patreon members that or in other countries. There's one that I
Mm.
just chatted with recently. He's in Australia. There's one guy in Israel. There's one person in South Africa. There's a lot of people in the UK, and they talk about quantities, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's say I'm able to the lack of quantities and sometimes the lack of discounts, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's say I'm able to get my hands on, you know, a bunch of winners. Let's say 10 or 12 SKUs of winners, and it's like $30,000 worth of inventory, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you know, that's an opportunity for the people overseas that, you know, can't get discounts, you know, where, you know, this is America, and if there's one thing we do, we crank stuff out on when it comes to goods.
Yeah.
So you know, they may want to buy, you know, a percentage of that, and you know, we hold it here
Mm-hmm.
in the US. There's this one gentleman, a Patreon member in Israel. He buys Lego 20% over RRP, and that's a great deal. And he sells it for maybe 90% or 80% RRP, and he makes much less ROI than, you know, people over here do. Well,
Mm-hmm.
what if he didn't have that problem anymore of,
Mm-hmm.
you know, buying stuff in Israel, where he could just wire us some money, and you know, we'll hold everything at 20% off. You know, so there's all kinds of opportunities.
Yeah, that's interesting. You're almost talking not even fulfillment center, but almost like you're it's almost like remote investment capability.
Right,
right.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. That's an interesting. I've not dabbled with it. Well, I kind of dabbled with it with my son,
Right.
teaching my son here about investing, so that hopefully by the time he's my age, he doesn't have to go into the day jobs like we do. And he's got the life, you know, running the reins on life there. But, you know, same kind of thing there. It's you're, you know, using someone else's money as a means to kind of fuel the system. And in his case, it's just to teach him about it. But, you know, he spent his own money on sets that I had already procured for him in essence. And then he gets to kind of see what his return is and choose when he wants to sell them and all that kind of stuff. So it'll be kind of a fun little experience there, but you know, the super small scale version of kind of what you're talking about.
Right.
I think. Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. Okay.
All right. Well, this was awesome.
I had fun.
It was action packed. I mean, there's definitely a lot of stuff to chat about. You know, and I'm going to put it on at the bottom in the description, a link to Dave's YouTube channel. Please check it out and please subscribe. And you have a website, right?
I do. The website is it's a box that had to be checked to qualify the business and some distribution warehouses and stuff like that. The website, I don't actually move anything through. Honestly, I have an Instagram account and the YouTube account are the two primary social media or outlets that I have. Maybe at some point in time, I may shift my inventory from Amazon and eBay over into my my actual website, but that would come at the same time that I open a local business. So
cool. All right, everybody. If you managed to be with us during the entire duration, you are definitely better than 80% of the people out there that have listened to this. So thank you for that. Once again, Dave from Scots Toys. I'm Jim from Wolf of Bricks. We will definitely catch you next time. Take care.